lizards, humans, little tiny children, glorious companions, ladies and gentlemen. Glorious companions. Alright, there's not actual tiny children in the game, but you get the picture. So this game is made by Ancient Forge. They're a small developer group. They've done a couple of other titles, but not really that much. This is definitely the first game they've done in this particular genre, so it's going to be an interesting one. I would just like to say thank you so much for the gaming codes so I could give this game a review. Big kudos to you guys. As Michael Scott would say,
thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
But enough about that. Let's actually get into the review. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I've really got to stop singing. It's embarrassing at this point. So, on the graphic settings, it's a surprisingly good amount of graphical options, bearing in mind, you know, the graphics on this game aren't, like, hit you in the face, this is fucking masterpiece. You know, there's a lot of struggle there on getting the textures right, and it definitely shows in some of the gameplay. But they have added quite a bit of options, you can kind of tweak it. I don't think anyone's going to have an issue running this game. Unless they're going to update and, you know, really push for in-depth textures. I really don't think anyone's going to have a big issue. But the fact that they've got a good amount of options for people to customize is a very good thing. It allows people to have their own customization. And I played it on 1440p like I normally do, but honestly, yeah, you're not going to have any issues. The character creation is pretty basic, but not bad for an indie game. I've seen a lot worse, and I mean a lot worse. You know, there is a bit of a customization with the character that you can play, what class they play. You know, you can add tattoos and things like that. Customize their starting stats and, you know, kind of plan out before you even go into. There's obviously 4 different class and, like, archetypes to go down. They're pretty basic, so if you're kind of, like, have any knowledge in RPGs, you're probably going to have come across these before. There's obviously a ranged character with their own abilities. There's like a rogue character where you can use like dual wield and things like that. There's obviously a more tanky character with, you know, more hit points and, you know, defensive abilities. And then obviously there's a support character for healing and things like that. But honestly, there's not huge. There's a little bit of difference. There's not huge amounts of difference between them all. I try to play a bit of every class. I feel like they're different enough that, you know, if you decided halfway through that you wanted to play something different, you could and kind of still get a different challenge out of it. But yeah, it's not. I don't think it's. I think they need to add a bit more between the classes to make it a bit more standing. Just because of the way that the gameplay is, I can feel I can get quite stale quite quickly. So adding and fleshing out some of these characters would be a big forefront for them. The sound design is quite basic, but the music's pretty good. Quite like the music, quite fantasy-like. I think they did a decent job of fitting that nicely. Unfortunately, I just feel like this game really doesn't hit the mark with polish, and for a 1.0 release, I would probably expect a little bit more, but I can also be a little bit forgiving for the fact that, you know, they are working on the projects alone, but still, I feel like it's very janky, and it definitely hits with, like, for example, the running animations, the characters are just really not that well done, and I think they really need to do a rework on the character models. I think they're okay, but I feel like they could do a lot better, especially with maybe the resources that they have, or kind of I can see in other projects that they've worked on. I mean, the combat is just super janky. The animations are just a little bit all over the place, but I can kind of be a bit more forgiving on that side. It can be quite difficult to get that right, but I think definitely a rework on that is definitely going to be something that they need to look at in the immediate future. I just didn't feel. I think one of the big issues I felt when playing the game, especially in the combat mode, is that they've made it so you can't actually see the enemy for the first few turns. Now, I get that from a mechanics point of view, but I also don't, because this is a tactical RPG. You want to be able to set up in a certain way. I feel like it makes the whole situation a bit obsolete, the deployment position. very obsolete because if you need to deploy your troops and you want to like put them in cover and things like this, you could, but you can't really counter what the enemy's doing in any way. So I feel like they need to get rid of that completely and be allowed to actually see the enemies in the turn and in the deployment place straight away, just so you can kind of get a better feeling of where they are and where you could be and things like that. So for a tactical level, I think that really needs to change. The other issue that I really had, and you probably see this in some of the footage, that the fucking way that the camera. I mean, I played this on controller. I did try it on mouse and keyboard. It didn't make that much of a difference. It's just the way the character moves across the map looks. First of all, it looks fucking weird, and second of all, the camera just doesn't fit and go smoothly with the transitions over the map. I felt like I was literally fumbling over the fact that I had to move the camera as the character's moving, and the camera just wasn't quite fitting on the angle and had to move it several times to try and like keep it in a decent way that I could see everything. Bearing in mind there's enemies and things like that you can encounter and you can miss things on the map, so that's definitely something they need to look at in the immediate future as well, because the fact that moving around the map is a big portion of the game, yeah, it kind of needs to be a little bit smoother than it is right now. But enough of the technical stuff. Let's get into the gameplay. What the fuck do you do in this game? Well, you're basically a mercenary. So I viewed this as two different things. So you can either essentially follow the story. Obviously, you'll be introduced to characters and things like that. Go on your own journey with that. They'll give you a lot of the mechanics while you play anyway. So, if you want to focus on the story, do. It's not that bad. It's pretty good. I spent about 15 hours in it from what I played so far. Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad. The writing is pretty good. Some of the characters are quite interesting. So I don't think they've done, a bad job at that. But I do like the fact that it's quite open-ended, so the fact that you don't have to go and follow that story if you don't want to. You can essentially go and do what you want to do. It's an open world. You can go anywhere you want at any time. You can go to cities and visit different factions and things like that. There's a big focus on, being a mercenary group where you can take on contracts. You can go and visit, like, cities and things and take on quests, earn money, and essentially do what you want, which is really good because obviously if you're not, or if you complete the story, at least gives a bit more replayability. Obviously some of the zones are getting harder and harder as well, and it can kind of add to the progression of the game, which is a good thing, a very good thing. Sometimes when stories end, you kind of just feel like the game's over, but I feel like you could probably go a bit longer with this game if you really wanted to. You can obviously level up your companions, assign them stats, give them new abilities, and kind of level them up as you play through the game, which is quite cool. You can kind of customize them to what you want. The other really good thing, and this is a benefit to them, is the fact that they haven't added a cap. So, like, normally I don't know, like, for example, Baldur's Gate 3, without mods, you can only have up to 3 companions. Well, with this, you can have more. So you can kind of have that nice picture and image of how big you want your companions to be and how big the group is going to be as a whole, which is a good thing because it kind of breaks the mold a little bit. And I think you can go up to 12, which is a big stepping stone for other games to look at, and having those bigger battles, especially when you view the game as you want to be this mercenary group. Having like 3 or 4 companions doesn't always fit, and if you're going for bigger jobs, more bigger loot, bigger rewards, and harder positions, you will need more companions to help you kind of balance out and interact with enemies. So I think they've done a good job at adding that into the game. There's quite a few enemy types, pretty good. There's obviously animals you can interact with on the road, bandits and things like that. They've also added some monsters and things that you can take on, which is kind of cool. I feel like there's a decent variety. I just wish that in the future they're gonna update some of this stuff and add more content in, which would be fantastic. The other side of this is that obviously it's a party system, so you're gonna have to manage resources. You're gonna have to manage things such as wages. So obviously every week in game, all your companions will want a wage, and you got to keep track of the energy levels, food resources, and that obviously if you don't manage that well, it will interrupt their morale, which will give them debuffs and things like that. So it's important that you kind of keep on top of regularly making sure that when you're camping, for example, and you set up camp, you've got people hunting and things like that. You can also craft in in the camping station. You can basically assign different companions to do different jobs to make sure that overnight and for a few hours in game they're not just sat there doing nothing. So there's also that, and I do appreciate they've added that in because sometimes you don't want to go into a city and waste like 250 gold coins just for them to stay overnight. That's such quite a lot of money. So especially in the early starts when you could have maybe like four companions and there's four of you. That's a decent amount of wage already. So if you're looking to try to get onto bigger quests and like level up with better gear, you're gonna have to be more careful with how you spend your gold and things like that. Now the game does have an interesting setting. They've obviously got their own lore and things like that. I just wish I could see more of it. They've created a world with its kind of own unique lore and world, and I wish I could see more of it as they progress this game. I think it'd be interesting to see like certain different events and trying to tidy up a little bit of what the world is gonna progress into. I wish I could see a bit more of that, but I'm sure that they will look into that further down the line with the success of the game. I think the biggest thing for them, they really need to concentrate on fleshing out some of the systems and really pushing quality of life stuff. Like I've already said in this video, there's a lot of janky animations and that. I think if they can just tidy all that up, it will make the game probably 5 times more better than it is right now. But what is it all we've been waiting for is the question. Is it worth your money? Now, in Great Britain, so in the United Kingdom, it is £15.49. Now, that's a decent price tag for an indie game, especially of this size. I would definitely say that if you're looking for a highly polished, completely bug-free game, and I can tell you what, this game isn't completely bug-free. I've crashed quite a few times. So bear that in mind. You may have better success than I did. I don't normally crash in games, but this one really just tipped my PC over the edge. Didn't really want to run that well. And I just crashed to desktop quite a few times, but I never really missed out on anything. The auto save is pretty good in the game, so that does make up for it. But yeah, if you're looking for like a really detailed and like fully fleshed out game, then this probably isn't going to be worth £15.49 for you. However, if you're going to be a little bit more forgiving, especially because it's an indie developer, they are working hard on this game. They are trying to push out updates now. They finished on other projects. I know there's a little bit of controversy that they had dropped the game, and I was reading some of the forums, and people were quite angry at the fact that the developers have heard no one's heard anything off the developers, and that's because it's dead, the game, and they've wasted their money, and they've charged us this amount of money, and blah blah blah. That's obviously not the case. They've obviously brought out, have already put out an official statement a while ago that they were pushed by the publishers to essentially go on other projects, so they weren't really readily available to be able to put into this game. But obviously now that's out the way, they're putting money and resources back into it. They're willing to really make this a game that people are going to enjoy, especially with the tactical RPG kind of viewpoint in mind, and fleshing out the world. I think that if you're looking for a game that you could like buy now, have a decent amount of time in, and then come back to it later, then £15.49 is a very fair price for this game. I think when they've tidied everything up, I think it's going to be probably. I believe that they could probably push that price tag a little bit more, like up to £17, just because of the amount of replayability you can get, the amount of things you can do, especially if they can flesh out some of the characters and things like that. I think it'll be a very, very good game, and I think they're definitely on the track of making this a really big success. And I really do hope that for them, that this is the kind of leap that they need to get fully established into the market. But they do have a lot of work to do. There is a lot of issues with the game, and I feel that yes, I got this code for free, but I'm trying to think of it from your guys' point of view, and if I had the money and whether I'd put the money into it. I think that with everything said, I think that I personally would probably buy it, and I'd probably play like I have played now, but I definitely be putting it down and kind of waiting to see what happens in the future with it. It's one of those games that's kind of if you have the money to do so spare wise, and you're looking for something that you can kind of put down play a decent amount of hours and put down and kind of hope that in the future it becomes better, kind of like an investment. I think this is probably, you know, something like that. But honest, if you don't have the spare money and you want something that's a bit more polished, then this isn't for you at the moment. Definitely be waiting, 6 months down the line to see what they do with it. But yeah, that's the review, guys. And it's a bit harsh on this one. I don't normally do it harsh, but obviously I have to say it how it is. Even if I got this game free, it's all about transparency for me. I don't want to just like say how amazing it is when it's actually not, because that's not, first of all, that's not our jobs as reviewers and things like that. They also need the criticism to be able to make the game better. So yeah, it's a bit harsh on this review, but honestly, I haven't said anything that's untrue. And I do hope that the game becomes better in the future, and I will pick this back up, let's say in 6 months time, and see if they've added different things to it and fleshed out certain things, quality of life improvements, things like that. But yeah, it was an interesting run. So thank you again very much to Ancient Forge for the copy, and thank you very much for you guys for watching and supporting the channel. I have been a little bit slow on content just because I'm trying to really look at, some of these games are pretty big, and I've obviously got a lot of stuff in the pipeline still, and trying to get through them as quickly as possible. But real life is kind of getting in the slight ways. It's a bit slower on the uploads, but I'm continuing to at least post once a week. So keep up to date. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and you like reviews and things like that. If you want to go and check out the other side of my gaming habits, then that is the Yes I Suck playlist. That's me just basically playing as I would normally play a game. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, give me a comment. What do you think of the game if you played it? If you have any questions about the game, please let me know down below and I will reply as soon as possible. Anyway, kudos and Shadow out.